With that said, we're going to talk today about powering up your AWS exam prep with generative AI. Just a little bit about me. I have over 29 certs, continuing to do a cert almost every month. I was a developer, DevOps tech lead, Scrum Master, QA architect, manager, training and documentation, captain in the military. So I'm an old guy. I've been around a long time. So just means I've done a lot of jobs. So today's events, we're going to cover an icebreaker. We're going to do an introduction to generative AI. And this comes from a presentation I did to the PMI Program Management Institute last week. Part 3, we're going to talk about the AWS exams, practitioner, associate, and professional architect exam. I'm going to do a GPT demo and show you how that's done. GPT creation and demos, how to write a GPT and just using your words. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I ever thought I could do just programming with my words. And what you get with that is a real kick when it comes to programming. You can almost program as fast as you can think. I like that. So, and also building your own course. So I'm going to show you how you can use this type of stuff to build your own course. Wrote a GPT to help you with that. So a lot of this stuff I was mentioning to Don before the meeting is that it's like eating your own dog food. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but you're actually creating something for yourself, and it turns out to be a great product. And I think Gmail was one of those things that was created internally for the company, and now look, it's been used everywhere. So that type of approach to programming. Oh, here are the 6 GPT programs that are out there. These links are live, so you can go there and play around with them. One's an icebreaker maker. So the actual icebreaker we're going to use to do today came from it. Choice Master, that's going to give you the ability to just throw a multiple choice question. It's going to do research on that and give you the right answer. And it actually goes to the web to pull that as well, gives you links. And additionally, it will give you like a little rhyme to help you remember the content. I find that helpful. Then we'll do Scrum Team 5 Ways. It's just a 5 ways. We actually start off with this teaching you how I built these different GPTs. And I got a story builder. This is the one I sent to the hackathon. I just recently participated in a hackathon with LabLabI. And I have a GTP builder. You actually can build GPTs with this GPT builder. So there you go. This morning or actually yesterday, I built a GPT with the GPT builder that collects all the news on AI, and then I use it to create a video. So I built a builder that builds a GPT that built the content for a video that I released. So it's pretty cool. With that said, today we'll be powering up your AWS exam prep with generative AI. On the 16th of December, we'll be talking about the PL 300 exam, and also we'll be talking about, of course, some AI applications with that. DP 500, and then we'll do Mastering HashiCorp on 24th February, and prepping for the IBM Cert Associate Developer Quantum Computing Exam 23 of March. So, and I will be adding more events, and I believe that other people will be volunteering to present as well, and that would be great. Get them up here in front of you, not just me. With that said, icebreaker today, if you could design a generative AI study buddy, what unique feature would you want to have to help you ace your AWS LS exams? You're going to design your own study buddy. Who wants to take a shot at that? Who wants to design their own study buddy? Generative AI. So what we've done is a pretty awesome slide. What we've done is we've put human intelligence in a box, right? We've solved the Tower of Babel problem. We have the universal translator. It translates language to language, but it does more than that, right? It codes. It sees, it thinks, it hears, it speaks. And what we've done is we've trained computers to think like people. And when you do that, you get 2 things. You get an exponential acceleration of knowledge, and you get extreme efficiency. And what we learned last week, you also get extreme volatility. So we almost watched AI go under $1 trillion of assets, almost moved to another company, then it moved back. I think they got afraid of the volatility. But be aware of that. So, and a lot of people are you hear like, Elon Musk, and nothing against Elon Musk, but he says stuff like, AI is the most disastrous thing that ever happened to humanity, and it's going to take all jobs, and you won't work unless you want to. But listen, that's all hype, because and it gets lots of clicks. But the truth is, where there's an exponential increase in knowledge, there's going to be exponential increase in work. It's just the nature of that work is going to change. And we saw how important human capital was when we almost saw OpenAI go under last week, right? But so there you go. I'm experiencing a 10,000% efficiency in workflow. So projects that would take me 4 months to do, I can do in 6 hours. I recently wrote a web page that would take a developer a day to do. I did it in 5 minutes. NASA recently released a paper where they are measuring iceberg melt, and they also are talking about a 10,000% efficiency and being able to do those measurements. So you're seeing some wild numbers like that, just like once again, increase in knowledge, extreme efficiency. That said, if you're a Scrum Master, and here's a good example, you just got supersized. And if you understand, like Scrum Masters, really, most of them are not technical. They're not programmers, and but suddenly they can program. And I'll tell you why. Because this stuff is multimodal. With that said, it's multimodal. And what does that mean? That means it can actually read, it can see, it can hear. Okay. And this multimodal piece is part of what's required for AGI, artificial general intelligence, where these things can actually interact like people. And so, for example, if you go into the search and you say, okay, draw a man relaxing on the beach, mountains in the background, absorbing the sun, relaxing the sun, then you'll get that. But then if you have a train whistle like an audio and you throw it in the search, then it'll put a train on the beach. And notice the guy is now on a cot with a glass of wine. I guess the cot makes him more comfortable because all the vibration and he needs the wine to get through it. If you take a picture of an elephant and you throw that in the search engine, now you get elephants on the beach. I notice the wine is gone because nobody wants a drunken elephant on the beach. But the thing about it is you are now interacting with images, sound, and text. So this thing is hearing, seeing, and talking. And the thing about it, too, from a very theoretical standpoint, these images were not drawn, right? These images were found. And so it's a single point in multidimensional space. So here's the problem with copyright. The problem with copyright is that how do you copyright a point on a number line? How do you copyright a point in multidimensional space? And that's what everyone's struggling with. And so the premium on knowledge has gone down because you're in an all knowledge space and you're using these models to basically find different images in this multidimensional space. With that said, with a Scrum Master, for example, you may have this business example where your company wants them to create, right, a global customer care center. And so you get your Scrum team together, you draw the image on the board of the program using UML diagramming. You put a bunch of notes in there, and then you take a snapshot of it. And then you take that snapshot and you throw it in a chat GP and say, create the program, and it writes the program for you. So now you can go from image to code. And that's where the Scrum Master now has his kick. That's now where he has his superpowers. You can do the same thing with database schemas. Just take an image of a database schema, throw it in a chat GP, and it will give you the code. And this is only going to get better. And here's an example where you got an AWS diagram. And you got a diagram, you just draw it out, and there you go. Just say, give me the Terraform code, and there's a Terraform code. So this is pretty amazing stuff. That said, I want to talk a little bit about the AWS exams and what you would expect from these three types of exams. I think I got a text here. Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about this morning, kind of hit me like John just hit me like a sack of potatoes. Like, wow, copyright's so important, but now it's so like nebulous in this multidimensional space. And I realized also copyright has kept us from discovery. It's been a hindrance to creativity because then we can't do certain things because it's all copyrighted. I think what it is, and from a purely theoretical mathematical point, so this is very theoretical, it's not the scraping, it's the pointing mechanism, right? The models steer us. So really the problem with copyright, I don't think it has to do with the multidimensional space, though we're going to figure out how to search it regardless. It's going to be how we built those models to search that space, right? So that's just very theoretical. I mean, I know there's a lot more details than that involved, but I actually proposed this as my math thesis many years ago, and I was laughed at. So no one's laughing now. All right, the three exams we're going to talk about today is the practitioner, cloud practitioner, the solutions architect, and the professional solutions architect. All right, just a little bit about these particular exams. When I think about these exams, I think about the learning curve, and this is a format learning curve. And the first one I think about is the novice, and that's the guy who doesn't know anything at all. He's just learning the concept. So that's your cloud practitioner. And when I think about the technician, the guy who knows how to do stuff, how to build stuff, I think about your associate level exam. But when I think about the architect, right, the guy who treats the if question, then that's the guy who's is like the ideation of knowledge, the guy who creates new things, who builds things, who figures out the system, who fixes stuff that other people can't fix. Doesn't necessarily have all the hands-on knowledge, because you got the technician to do that, but he actually can figure out things the technician may not understand. And that's your professional level exam. And then the engineer, what AWS tries to do, it tries to build managed services to handle those, because they realize these systems are changing so quickly. If they can build managed services to handle all this, then it makes our lives easier to do the cloud. All right, with that said, we'll move on. All right, so when you look at this exam, the practitioner exam, you see 25%, 26% is just cloud concepts. And you got security and compliance, you got technology, billing, and pricing. These are how the exam, 25%, 30%, 16%. So we're going to take a look at an example question and we'll use a GPT on it. So here's an example question you might find. Which of the following is an advantage of that users experience when they move on premises workloads to the AWS cloud? Elimination of expenses for running and maintaining data centers, price discounts that are identical to discounts from hardware providers. C, distribution of all operation controls to AWS. D, elimination of operational expenses. So we're going to take that, we're going to copy this, and we're going to throw it into our GPT. So let's bring that up. That link is at the bottom of the screen. And this is the Choice Master, which tackles multiple choice questions, ensuring comprehensive and educational approach to problem solving. And so hopefully it'll give us the right answer. So let's click on Choice Master. But if you use my Choice Master, you can make sure you have the right answers. So we're going to take that. We're going to paste that in there. All right, let's paste that question in there, and we're going to run it. Cross our fingers, and hopefully it will work. So Choice Master now is going to go through and going to start doing some research. So it's going to go to Bing, for example. It's going to go out on the web. So remember that ChatGPT used not to go out on the web. Now I just tell it in the program, go out on the web. It's going to search Amazon.com. And it's going to start looking at the different possibilities. And it says, hey, look, select A, elimination of expenses for running, maintaining databases. That is the correct answer. Now it's going to explain each answer for you, why it's right or why it's wrong. Okay. And also these little quotes, it's actually giving you links to go do research on those documents. I'm going to tell you why, the rationale between why the answers are right or wrong. And it gives you your rhyme. Let's see what it says. In clouds embrace, costs find their chase. Data centers space, no more a base. So maybe you're good with rhymes and you like that type of thing, and that'll help you remember the answer. No, I got to tell you, this is kind of funny because it's an easy one, but when you get to the advanced test, which we'll take a look at, you're going to go, oh my God, I'm glad we have these rhymes. So if you look up here, it also gave you links. So if you want to go back and look at the right answer and see, hey, give me some rationale, what source did I get that from? So you can hunt that down. And Livio acquires, I've never been to this site before, but it's got a write up on it. Okay. All right. Okay. So with that done, that's what a practitioner exam looks like. So let's go take a look at an associate exam. So we'll skip over for time's sake. You can go take a look, guys, in your slide deck. For time's sake, we'll skip over the second question and we'll go right to the associate. So in the associate exam, you have a structure around 4 domains: design resilient architectures, 30%, design high performing architectures, 28%, design secure applications and architectures, 24%, design cost optimization, 18%. And thing you're going to see about these exam questions, they just get a little bit harder, right? That's a little bit more difficult than the one we saw before. Okay, and so I'll go ahead and read this through this, and we'll walk. And I'm going to throw it right into the exam creator, and you can see what it does with it, or the choice master, see what it does with it, and then we'll see if it gets the right answer. So a company collects data for temperature, humidity, and atmospheric pressure in cities across multiple continents. The average volume of data that the company collects each site daily is 500 gigabytes. Each site has a high-speed internet connection. The company wants to aggregate the data from all these global sites as quickly as possible in a single Amazon S3 bucket. The solution must minimize operational complexity. Which solution meets these requirements? You got A, B, C, and D. I'll go ahead and tell you that I know that A is the right answer, transfer acceleration. And whenever you have IoT centers across the world, you want to use that transfer acceleration to make that happen. So we won't read through all these answers, but we'll throw it into the ChatGPT Choice Master and see what Choice Master does with it. So right now I'm treating it like a function. So when I click this, it actually brings up the program to run and ask me to input my question. So give it a moment to think through that. It should ask me to do that. Now you can see down right now, I'm eating up a lot of bandwidth just because it's going to do a lot of searching. So I'm starting to eat up bandwidth real quickly. But so we're going to run that and let's see what happens. Okay. So it's going to Bing. And it just immediately found it. He's going to AWS S3 transfer acceleration, visiting tutorialdojo.com. And so when I wrote this program, I just told it search the web. And so now with the GPTs, it immediately goes out and searches the web. So it probably didn't have that in its model. So anyway, what this did right here, it went through, did the research. You saw that. It says S3 transfer is designed, and S3 transfer acceleration is designed for speeding up the data in the S3 buckets. It does this by using Amazon Cloud globally distributed edge locations. And if you go to the link there, it'll take you there and show you where it got the information. Okay, there you go. And I haven't been to this site before in my whole life. So immediately starts going to sites and going to places you may not go before. So the answer is A, as I mentioned. It gives you the explanations why. And now it's going to give you the little memory rhyme. For data vast as the ocean blue, S3 transfer acceleration, swift and true. I love it. So I got to tell you, as these exam questions get harder and harder, you're going to really just love these rhymes. So let's go ahead and I won't run the other ones, but I'll go ahead and show them to you, okay? So now we're going to move on to the architect exam. Okay, so kind of questions you get from the architect exam. So in the architect exam, we'll move up another level. They get even harder, right? So they have paragraphs and paragraphs to read. And so one, design solutions for organizational complexity, that's 26%. Design for new solutions, 29%. Continuous improvement for existing solutions, 25%. And accelerate workload migration and modernization, 20%. And if we take a look at some of those questions, you can see here's one that you can see now they're much bigger and they're more difficult. A company needs to architect a hybrid DNS solution. The solution will use an Amazon 53 private hosted zone for the domain. I use cloud.qualec.com for the resource stored on the VPCs. The company has the following DNS resolution requirements. On-premise systems should be able to resolve and connect to cloud.qualec.com. All VPCs should be able to resolve cloud.qualec.com. There is already an AWS direct connection between the on-premise corporate network and AWS Transit. Which architecture should the company use to meet these requirements with the highest performance? And you can read all through that. I got to tell you, I believe in my heart that the AWS professional exam is a mental endurance exam. You're exhausted by the time you read all these questions. Thank you very much for your comment, Corrigan. He says this is super cool. And Malachi says, I've had a chat GPT give me fake PowerShell modules and command laugh out loud. That's for sure. I mean, it's getting better. I mean, when I first started working with ChatGPT, it didn't do some of the containerization stuff, Kubernetes, but then it started doing Kubernetes, and we've seen this get better and better. I think the holy grail of this is what you're starting to see come out of AI, OpenAI right now. They're talking about QStar, and QStar is a creative search engine that they're working on. It's the next generation of GPT intelligence, and that will give you the level of programming that you're looking for. All right, with that said, the next one, and I just ran it through the choice master, and it gave me the answer and the rationale. Also, I had the ability I was working with actually have it draw a picture for me, and I used Code Interpreter for that. So would you like Code Interpreter to create a diagram for you? So if you want a diagram of what you just output it'll actually create a diagram for you. Some of the diagrams are really good and some aren't, so I don't know I'm going to get here. You can actually, Code Interpreter is okay for writing graphs. So if you've done any graph database work before, you can have it analyze data and actually do a graph for you. And let's see what comes out here. Anyone have any discussion on why we're okay? Well, okay, it wasn't that great, but you can see you can get a diagram out of it. Some of them are good and some of them aren't. All right, with that said, let's move on. This was okay. I mean, it showed the on-premises system being connected to the AWS Direct Connect, and that was going to the transit gateway into the Route 53 and all the different VPCs. So that actually was the solution graph. All right, the next, just another problem. You can see how long these are. And if you're studying for these exams like this, you really want to use a system like this to work through the examples. I think one thing that was pretty cool here is I had an image that I pulled off the website, and then I took that image, I threw it into ChatGPT, and I said, redraw this, and it gave me a nice image like that. And so if you've done stuff like vector stock, you can find out that you actually can create these things. You pay $1 for an image like this, and now you can create them just right away in ChatGPT using the DALL-E system. You might want to go and do a little work here because it doesn't always spell things right yet, but I imagine a ChatGPT 5 will take care of that. I wanted to show you this last one before we move on. And this one was pretty cool. A company is storing data on premises on a Windows file server. The company produces 5 gigabytes of new data daily. The company migrated part of the Windows-based workload to AWS and needs the data to be available on the file system in the cloud. The company already has established an AWS Direct Connect between the on-premise network and AWS. Which data migration strategy would your company use? And so if you throw that in, you get a rhyme to move data day by day. Data sync to FSX paves the way, and that is the correct answer, and that's number B. I was thinking about this. Yeah, I love these rhymes, and so maybe instead of and you're going to see something. We're actually create a coming up. We actually throw these questions into ChatGPT, and it creates a space world, and these questions get solved inside a space world. And now I'm thinking maybe I should create a movie, a musical based on these rhymes. Who knows? That said, let's talk about GPTs and how you build them. All right, and that's kind of what I want to show you, and you're going to be amazed at what you can do. Where did this all come about? If you watch the developers conference, which I did, which on November 6th, we have Sam Altman here, and he basically revealed his GPT's framework, his agent workforce of the future. And what he did, he gave his developers, if you're paying $20 a month for ChatGPT 4, you're now a developer. And he gave them the ability to build these ChatGPT 4s or custom GPTs. And so I'm going to show how to do that today. Some of them we're going to look at today. We're going to look at the Scrum Team 5 Ways tool. That's an easy one. Then we'll look at Story Builder. That's the one that I actually submitted to the hackathon. And then I have a GPT builder that we may or may not get to. Okay. With that said, I want to talk a little bit about how you build the Scrum Team 5 Ways, but let's run it first. All right. So actually, one of the reasons I pulled back on my bandwidth and didn't run all these examples is because I want to make sure we can run some of these. So if you're ever on a Scrum team, now I actually learned this. I was a Six Sigma black belt at one time. So I actually learned this from Six Sigma black belt. And that's the 5 whys. So whenever you have a problem, you shouldn't just ask why once, you should ask 5 times. Why? So we're actually going to start this program up. So click on Start 5 Whys. And so I'm going to start the program up. And it's going to say, hey, let's start the 5 whys. So please clearly define a problem the Scrum team is facing. Describe in a simple sentence. So who has been on the Scrum team and has had a problem before they'd like to give the Scrum team 5 whys tool? Have you ever never had enough time to complete your project? All right. So anyone want to put anything in the chat? Want to give me something? Or should I just type in couldn't complete our project? Not enough time. All right, so it's just going to come back right at you and it's going to go, oh, understood. This is a problem that there is not enough time to complete the project. Why is there not enough time to complete the project? Please identify a direct cause. And so now you go down, you go, well, okay. Well, it's because the stories aren't broken up. Okay, because lots of times people don't break their stories down. Okay, why are the stories being broken up in a way that affects the completion of the time project? We are not sizing them right. Okay, so it's just 5 whys. It just keeps asking the why again. Why are the stories not being sized correctly? What is the cause of the issue? Well, program manager, the PO, excuse me, product owner, makes us hurry through planning. Okay, so I go, oh, okay. Now we're getting down to it. Why does the product owner hurry through the planning phase? What factors are contributing to the rush? He's not trained well. he's not trained in Scrum. There you go. There you go. Okay. Why hasn't the product owner if this feels like the root cause, we can proceed to develop solutions. Otherwise, we can spoil further. Yeah, this is it. This is it. Let's see what it says. And oh boy, something went wrong. So once again, OpenAI is having some bandwidth problems. Let's regenerate and see if we can get something out of this. Great. We've identified the root cause. The product owner has not been trained in Scrum methodologies, leading to a hurried planning session and an incorrect sizing of stories, which in turn affects the overall time allocated for the project completion. Let's brainstorm potential solutions to address this root cause. These solutions should be actionable and effective in ensuring the product owner receives adequate training in Scrum. So there you go. And this could go on. And I found this really entertaining, especially if you've been a Scrum Master, and I was for about 3.5 years. And if you were Six Sigma, and I was, and so this is great. And you got all these algorithms that you do that you can suddenly put into ChatGPT and make them work. So let's see how it's built. And once again, there's not a single line of code. It's just all words. Okay. And here's the program in words. All right. And there's a lot of things that we do in this program that I learned from the hackathon that really helps me write these programs. So here's the first thing that I do. I put things in quotes. And when you put something in quotes, you can call it like a function. So that's the thing. First thing you try to figure out, because you're trying to turn it into code, right? How do I call things like a function? Well, you can put them in quotes. And if you call them, put them in one of those, you saw it in the button earlier, you just clicked on it and it called it. So that's one thing I learned for this particular program. The next thing I do, I want a chain. And what chain is, I want a sequence to have one thing happen after the other. Lots of times when we put all these words inside of these containers, it does all types of things. You don't know what's going to happen next. And so what I do, I say, well, if you look at this, facilitate the root cause investigation as going through the following 4 steps. Now, list the steps 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll sequentially go through those steps. So that's a pretty cool thing to do. So someone mentioned, how do I know it's doing one thing before the other? Well, if you want to try to keep that from happening, you can get it to step. And then the next thing is I can this semicolon, see I'm separating things with semicolons, it kind of acts like a subroutine. So if I define something below in a semicolon and I say upon reaching 5th Y or earlier, if the root cause is identified, I will provide you with, I got a misspelling there, develops solutions. So you see what you saw at the end, it provided me with some solutions. And so that's 3 really cool things that you can do to build these things. Now let's take a look at where this code is inside of Chat GPT. So I'm gonna go to Chat GPT, and now here's a number of these things I've written. And if I go to Explore, and we want to take a look at the Scrum Master and take a look at Edit, you can see and configure, and you open it up, that's where all that code is. And it's just words. And so now you're just programming by writing words. Now, if you're a product owner and you're just singing glory hallelujah because you have a new synergism with your Scrum Master, because your Scrum Master, with your prompt engineer, because you're now programming with words. And so a lot of your user stories that you wrote can now be directly turned into code, So it's pretty cool. Now I got a sad side of this, and a sad side, if you're programming, you love programming, there may be a day coming where you may not be able to program the way you're programming. You may be only prompting. And the reason being is when you program, it's a snapshot, right? And eventually that snapshot breaks. But if you prompt it, the models only get better. So they understand more of what you said. It's like a living system almost. So you can see here's my 5 Ys right here. So I just click that button and it calls it like a function. And here's my steps, and it steps through the 4 steps sequentially. Isn't that cool? All right. So that's the first example of one. And here's the screen right here. Here's an example as we just walked through. So I put that here in case my bandwidth got eaten up. All right, so before I move on, let me ask you, are there any questions about this? So if you want to build something new, okay, then you'll go to Explore. This is a good question, Wei. Thank you very much. Right? And you'll go create a GPT. And there you go. And so a lot of people start here and try to create and talk through, and that's fine. That's a good way to start. Or you can go directly through configuration, and if you build a configuration, you just throw it into instructions. That's it. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, isn't that great? I mean, I'm flying. I mean, I'm building stuff left and right that I used to have to do manually, and now it's all automated. So I just bring it. If I need something, I just build a new GPT. And so I'm releasing a lot of mine public, so you guys feel free to use them. They're free to use. And if you want to look at code, I can send you code. Just let me know, okay? Or when I say code, I mean words, prompt engineering prompts, right?
So all
Right.
we need is not the code.
It's not code. It's all words. I'm gonna show you a more complex one coming up, so you'll see something a little more complex.
What are your thoughts on like the retrieval of these GPTs? Do you still think like using LangChain as a framework to kind of chain commands together makes sense, or do you think just putting that all in the special instructions and just giving it like a super prompt? You
You know,
think
this is
that
yeah, you're asking a very good question because this is the very first thing I started thinking about. How do I make this act like LangChain? Because lots of times I'll go write in LangChain and in Hugging Face, and I'll bring it over here and try to make it work like a work in GPT. And the way I found to make it work like LangChain is to just say go through these following steps and put the wording in the following steps. Because if you're building a LangChain, you have your chain, but then in the chain you're describing what you want it to do, right? And you know in natural language. So you're doing the same thing here. And this was my solution. I'm sure there's more than one way to do this, but this was my solution to making a chain. Right. I guess the point too is I'm not using an API here, right? It's going through their system. So they're paying for this development. I just do my $20 a month. All right, good question. Let's move on to the next example. This is actually what I submitted for my hackathon. And I called it World Builders. Okay, and so there's a little bit of theory here, so we'll walk through that. This particular one was creating a world memory palace to enhance learning for AWS cloud exams. So the core idea here is to aid individuals preparing for the AWS cloud certification exams. And I think Dom mentioned before the meeting how hard these things are to study for. I agree. The GTP model is trained to transform standard multiple choice questions from AWS exams into engaging narratives set in a personalized fantasy world created by the user. The world is inhabited by a hero character who encounters and solves the exam-related problems as part of their adventure. By integrating complex cloud concepts into dynamic and imaginative story, the user is not merely memorizing facts, but experiencing them. This experiential learning approach is hypothesized to significantly enhance retention and recall. So basically the idea, if you can get emotionally engaged, then you're going to have more neurons firing in your brain. So where there's emotions, there's connection. And so stuff like this is rich and, you know, it's like somewhat experimental. And so I've been building this stuff up. Let's see, Dom said, then just link with Mike on the LinkedIn to find out which group he's in. Yeah, I am. Yeah, for you guys who want, I got a hackathon that I'm going to be doing. This is one hackathon. I got another hackathon coming in the 5th, I guess around the 15th of December or so. And it's on GPT Vision. So if you want to get involved with me and do a hackathon, please feel free to go up and join my group. So I think Dom put a link in there. So good. Thank you, Dom. So with that said, let me move on with this. And so basically, there's a reason for doing this. I mean, you're going to see the educational market grow about 34% in the next by 2030. Here's kind of the example of what an adventure is going to look like. And so we're actually going to run this code and we're going to talk about how it's, you know, and then once we run it, we'll talk about how it's built. Now, in order to do this, I had to actually do a lot of research. And one thing I did is I took a course by Paul Jenkins on Udemy, and he did a whole masterclass on storytelling and how to build worlds. And there's two approaches to building worlds. One, as a writer, I can actually just introduce the world as I need it, or I can actually create the whole world and have the story happen in that world. So in this example, we're actually creating the whole world. And so what we do is we took all this and we put it in a RAG system, and I created a GPT for that. That wasn't part of the entry contest. And I'll skip over some of this stuff here. And what I would go is, well, give me a theme and give me a character. So I said, well, for this theme, it's for a space battle narrative with an AWS certified cloud practitioner theme. And it was a new female cadet being thrown into this battle. And then when I threw that in, the GPT actually gave me an entire world. And that was this. And it, you know, and how I called it Elara. That was the name of the cadet and how she fit into this world. And once I had that, then I could actually put that into my program and use that to put a question from the AWS exam, and would put that question somewhere in that world, and the cadet would solve it. And we're going to do that today, okay? So at this case, the world structures here, I just put in quotes, and this is how the program was written. You can see it's almost like the 5 Whys program, but it's a little more complex. There's more in it, okay? So let's go ahead and run the program, see what it does, and then we'll talk about how it was built. Okay, you guys ready for that? Reminds me of Math Blasters. Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate that comment. Good. All right. Let's go ahead and run it. So I think I hopefully have the link at the bottom. Okay. Chose the wrong link. Here it is. Story Builder is what it's called. All right. So you can see, once again, these are like my functional quotes. So if I click on one, it'll actually start the program running. So it's going to start the program running, and it's going to say, great, let's begin our story building and set the world of galactic cloud foundations to get started. I'll need you to provide a multiple choice question to relate it to the story's theme. The question should be related to AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner concepts and have one correct answer. So let's do that, and let's go find one. And let's see here. I'll go back to the presentation. I'll pull a question from, actually, I'll do one from the associate. We looked at the S3 transfer, so let's grab that one. And the answer is going to be A, so I'll put the answer in with it. So let's copy that. Answer is A. Now, you may not have to provide this. It should go ahead and figure it out, but if it doesn't, at least it knows which one you've given it the one. I wrote the code to receive the answer, so there you go. So let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. Cross your fingers, guys. Ah, I reached my limit. Ah! It's killing me. I warned you guys, and this was the best stuff. I warned you guys that this might happen. All right, so what I'm going to do, I think I have a video of this. Okay, so I go to edit, and I go open up the ChatGPT, and I go to config, and I show you the code. Okay, and that's the actual code that we're going to walk through in a few moments. I'll show you how it was built. And then what I do in the video, I say, well, that's pretty easy. Now let's go ahead and run it. Okay. And so I'm gonna go to Explore, and I click on this Story Builder, and then I click on Start Story Builder, and that's actually that's like a functional call, and it actually starts the program up. And the program asked me to, hey, can you put in a multiple choice question? And I said, okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and paste in a multiple choice question, and so I just grab one right here, and here I'm gonna do a practitioner question. Okay, so grab one of those. Hey, this is a great way to do this. I'm gonna do this next time. Sometimes when things go bad, they're good for good. So I paste that in there, and I hit return. And now what it's going to do is going to look at that story, that story I created, that world I created. It's going to put this cadet in that world where it needs to be and where she's going to solve this problem. So, and it's like a command memo. So it turns the question into like a command memo coming from a command center, right? And so she gets that on the frame, and she's supposed to solve this. And it tells you that option 3 is correct and the rationale for that question. So it's kind of helping you learn this. And then what it's going to do is going to write a screenplay. Okay, so that's next after it gives you the whole rationale for the question, if it's right or wrong. So here's the screenplay. In the bustling command center of the Galactic Cloud Academy, Cadet Alara Vex is intently focused on her console with swift and precise. And it gives you a DALL-E image for that. And so you can see a DALL-E image for that. And then it asks you, hey, do you want to end or do you want to add another question? And so you have the opportunity to take another question and throw it in there and continue your learning experience. You also can put in some extra details and guide the story somewhere else. So in this particular example, did it pause? In this particular example, we're actually going to grab an associate question, and we throw it in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to have her meet a friend. So she's going to meet a male friend cadet that's going to help her solve a problem. And as she begins to solve that problem, eventually it will turn into a love relationship, right? That kind of happens in movies. And he's probably got some dysfunction. So through working with her, he overcomes some of his inhibitions, right? And she becomes a better person by helping someone else. So these are the type of things that happen when you're creating movies. You do a lot of this stuff when you're actually creating stories like this. You do a lot of research in this. And so it's going to build the story, and here's a new narrative. And there's her new friend. Ta-da-da-da. And the love story begins, right? So there you have it. There's her friend. And then you can choose to end it. And when you choose end story builder, so it calls it like a function in the story builder, what it does, it actually brings it to an end, and it's going to tell you everything that you learned in the story. Okay. Let's recap the adventure, and that's how it works. So now let's dig into the code and figure out how this was written. And this site's really complicated, right? But it's just words, and it's just a few paragraphs, and that's it. So let's walk through it. We'll get off of this. All right, now we're going to do, we're actually going to go into story builder, and we're going to actually, and what you want to do is you want to go to the explore button, right? And you can see where the code is in story builder, right? And there you go. That's the code that I was talking about in the configure side. Okay. And when I'm coding or putting this in here, I like to make it big so it's easy to work with. I close it, and then you can save it, right? And you can make it public if you want to. And this should be public, so I'll go ahead and confirm that it's public so you guys can use it. All right, with that said, let's go back to the presentation. I'll show you how it was built. So we'll go down the world builder. And so we already talked about building the world. And now here's the code. I mean, just not a lot there. And so there's a number of things that we walk through to actually build this. And if you go through the video link that I sent you, it'll actually basically give the same explanation I'm about to give you now. Okay. And here is the world builder. I just put it in parentheses, but it's a long couple of paragraphs here of that whole world goes in this section right here. And you can see that semicolon kind of treats it like a function. So or a function call or like a subroutine. You can see when I use that word up here, it almost like calls that. And that's not quite how it happens, but that's the way I like to think about it. And with that said, the first thing we do is we use these quotes. And you can see in the actual interface of the World Builder GPT, or excuse me, Story Builder GPT, I actually have these buttons and say I can call these just by like using quotes. Isn't that cool? That's so cool. And that's number one. Now, number two, there's 6 things that I do. And number two, the second thing that I do, let's go back, is I use this step piece. And with the step piece, and I give it numbers, the statements that I make, to make sure it walks through them sequentially. So I'm enforcing the chain. And that was one of the things that was really illuminating to me, because I want to treat this like what? A chain. Okay, with that said, so it enforces the chain to go through these sequential steps. And that was like a big winner for me. And then the next thing you do, next one is number 3, is that you create like these subroutines just through words and semicolons, and anything in those semicolons underneath those are going to be run when you put that wording in the sentence. Isn't that cool? I can't believe it. And then the next one, number 4, I create a loop. Now, how do you create a for loop? How do you create a while loop? Well, this is how I do it. Use continuation language, right? And then when you have that quotes, it's like a function. It's like a conditional loop. And it keeps asking you, do you want to add another question? Do you want to add another question? You say, well, I'm done, end story, and you're out of the loop. Isn't that cool? It's conditional language. Turns it into a for loop without coding. That was just a hoot. The next thing I did is I found out that if you call the service specifically by name that you're using, if you're going to want to create an image like DALL-E, call DALL-E. Call it DALL-E. Don't just say draw an image. Say use DALL-E to draw an image, right? Or use code interpreter to create a graph. Actually call those services. And then number 6, what I found out, I could put an option there to add additional details so I could guide the story. So if I wanted the story to change direction, was getting bored, I want to get off the polytope, I could do it here. And that is the code for this right here.
So I have a question here. So, like as you're working through the story builder, and let's say you want to indicate like, oh, I missed this one, so I want to reinforce this topic. And maybe could you like give yourself more questions within the story builder, but then maybe you also just want to integrate with like Quizlet, right? So I want it to generate a note card, a flashcard for me as well for that question it just came up with given my scenario. Is that a possibility?
I would actually go and look at Zapier and see if Zapier has an interface to Quizlet. And then you have the ability to reach out to those systems and actually input or bring from. Yeah, so Zapier has like 5,000 services or something, where you can actually interact with this system and those services outside of those systems. I think that gets kind of close to the question you're asking. This obviously is kind of a beginning tool. This wouldn't be a finished product, so you actually hook this up to other things. One of the things I'm working on is building multiple agents, multiple programs like this that stack together in one agent and getting them to interact with each other. That's coming. So I think your question is, how do I take this to the next level? And that's always what we do as programmers, right? We write something, hey, I want to write something better. Now I want to write something better. And so the next time you see something like this from me, probably in about, I'm doing this on another presentation, I guess on the 16th, you'll see an iteration of this. It'll be better. Yeah. Thanks for your question. That was a good question, by the way.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions? That was very good. Go ahead.
Would you be able to create custom variables? Like, let's say I create a story. We're at question, like we're at like chapter 15, let's say, right? Chapter 15 of the story. And I'm like, you know
Right.
what? I really don't like chapter 13 to 15. I think I made a mistake at chapter 13. I want to do it all over again. Is there a way to tell the program, like, delete those and let's start again?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do that all the time when I'm working with, if I'm creating, it depends how you're creating it as well. If you're creating within the interface, you know, and say you're talking to, I'll bring it up here. Say you're you're in create mode and you're talking to it and you create all the stuff and it builds it for you. Say, I don't like that. Just delete and start over. It'll delete and start over for you. That's one way of doing it. If you're doing it through configuration, I think once again, your question actually takes it to the next level beyond what we have here, right? We're actually building an entire story system. And so that what you're doing is you have agents that talk back and forth. And so as these agents talking back and forth, we talked about agent swarms. And what agent swarms are, they're, in essence, these bots talking together. So now I'm actually going to go to a slide I actually skipped over. Okay, cool. Because this addresses your comment directly, believe it or not. So it's a good comment because here it comes. When I started programming AI, I realized there's two types of programming I was doing. One was what we call knowledge creation, where I was using agents, and the other was chaining, where I was processing things in a chain. And so someone mentioned LangChain earlier. That's exactly what I was doing with LangChain. So what's interesting is it has to do with how you're treating data. If you're going small to big, you're using agents. Like, for example, maybe you got a log line, or you got a storyline, you're creating a script or a movie or a book, or maybe you got some user stories and creating a program. That's agents, people working together in tandem to build something. Like maybe here you got a Scrum team and they're working together to build a product. So they're ideating, they're going back and forth, and then you're in the loop too, and you don't like something. So you say, change that. And the agents get together and they work and they change it. And that's exactly how you want to do. You want to do that in an interactive story mode, right? With knowledge creators. On the other side is like chaining. It's like an assembly line, right? So you might think of it like a global customer care center. You get a language, you translate it, you summarize it, you get a result, you translate the result back in the foreign language and send it out. So you're not really ideating. You're not creating new knowledge. You're just repackaging knowledge, right? So what was interesting about this is actually, it turns out like humans, like us, AI also has two types of workers, right? And humans, we have our blue collar workers. There's our assembly line workers. We have our white collar workers. We're the ideation people. We create knowledge, our knowledge creators. And it's just like real life, right? And so we look at this in terms of Maslow's hierarchy needs. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Peek's work on puzzle motivation. But in that work, Dan Peek talks about, the different type of workers. And these are our blue collar workers down here, our little chainers, and they're our assembly line people. And if you yell at someone, if you give them more money, they get more product. But if you're a knowledge creator and you yell at them and you give them more product, you yell at them, get more money, they don't make more product. You treat these two different classes of people differently. So your knowledge creators, basically, they have to have a sense of worth, right? Goal and purpose and mastery and autonomy. They need these things, but AI doesn't need this, right? AI will work 24/7, doesn't need bean chairs or free meals or ping pong tables. And they don't, you ask them a simple question, and they'll give you a simple answer. You ask them a complex question, they give you a complex answer. The only thing AI doesn't do well is brag, right? You had ask me a question like, hey, Mike, what about this? Something simple. I'll just go on all day and brag about how brilliant I am. But what's happened is these systems have turned everything upside down. And so we used to think they could never create, right? But that paradigm has shifted. And now we're seeing that those people who are the knowledge creators are actually most exposed to this type of technology, especially with the queue system coming. So what you're asking is, how do I ideate with the system? And you do that through agents. And that was a long explanation to your question, but that was a very good question. So thank you.
That was a good explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I got to go back to the slides I skipped, but they came at the right time, so that was good. So with that said, here's the program. So with words, that just drives me nuts. I did this presentation at PMI, and pretty much these are all program managers in the room, and they went, "Wow, can't believe it! I can do this. So you guys can do this very easily." And so yeah, so there you go. Any other questions about this? Okay, cool.
So you
All right,
haven't tried the API way, na?
I'm sorry, what?
Using APIs.
Yes, I used to program. You can do it with APIs as well. Absolutely, you can program all this with APIs and chaining and everything else. You'll probably use the same type of words, but within chains, and you'll be using APIs on the backstory. But this doesn't use APIs. This uses the framework for ChatGPT that has been created by OpenAI. So what the nice thing about it is, if I'm using APIs, I'm paying for it, right? If I'm using this, I'm just doing my standard $20 a month. Now, the
But-
good thing of what OpenAI did, they drastically brought the price down for developing with APIs. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, see, the thing is, we are not sure, some of these answers are right or not. That is a possibility, right or no?
What's the
Because
possibility?
when we are relying on ChatGPT, you know, I mean, we have this hallucination problem, right? We get a multiple, things will be incorrect in many, oftentimes. So
What,
if you have a knowledge base locally, and then right now you see you're giving the answers, and then you are trying to build it, right?
I'm just going to tell you my experience. When ChatGPT first came out, 85% of the questions were right. The other 15% were hallucination. When 4 came out, 95% were correct, and 5% were hallucination. You can't pull the human out of the loop, right? Because that will run off the rails. Okay, and I got to tell you that the product of these systems is not accuracy. The product of these systems is efficiency. And so as we move on, when ChatGPT comes along, you're going to go from a 95% accuracy to a 98% accuracy because you're hitting that Q search. But we're watching this technology change on our feet and get better and better. So what you might have thought, a month ago, it's changing very
Okay.
rapidly. But I'm seeing, I mean, I saw an answer today, it was wrong, but I knew it was wrong. So, I mean, you can't take the human out of the loop, right? You have to have someone there. And I mentioned in my PMI presentation, you have to have like an AI facilitator, someone to make sure this stuff doesn't run off the rails. And that typically is an experienced person that knows when it's hallucinating. With that said, I've heard other people say, well, hallucination also is a part of coming up with new ideas. But I think the Q system they're creating is the new idea system, not necessarily hallucination. We don't like the hallucination, right, at all. But, that's what you have to watch, but it's getting better. It's not worse. And I would say about 95% of the time, these questions are right. And then you can kind of figure out when they're not. If you have experience, if you don't, then yeah, you can be led astray, but that's only 5%, right? How many people actually go into an exam knowing more than 95% of the material, right? Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and move on to the last example, and we'll look at that. And that is the world builder takeaways. We'll move on from that. That was part of my presentation. This is build your own course. And so one thing you can do, that one of my frustrations with the AWS exams, or with all these exams, it just seems so random. It's like, really, couldn't this be more organized? And so one way to organize that is go ahead and download the whole outline for a curriculum. I download, let me go ahead and show you the link real quick here. If you want to, for example, if you're taking the advanced exam, and let me bring that up, then you can actually pull down the whole syllabus. And as opposed to going to a video course or something, you can actually build your own course. And one way to build your own course is to just, start. I created something called a questionnaire pro. And so you can, for example, let's take a look at network traffic monitoring. So basically, I go ahead and say, as a user, you are an AWS cloud expert researching AWS network traffic monitoring. Understood. So it says, yeah, I know that. So now what it's going to do, it's going to go in there as an expert. It's going to go into the web and search the web and pull in all the documents on this particular topic. So now you know it's right because you can know it's not hallucinating because you actually go look at the websites. You know what I'm saying? So in this case, you're not hallucinating because you actually go there and click on something and see if is that correct. And so you go there and that's the site that it's pulled that information from. So you know that information is accurate. So lots of times, if you're worried about hallucination, you've got to have checks on it, right? And so it builds all this information out so you can actually learn about stuff you didn't know. So you're actually creating a course for yourself using this type of material. And then what it will do is it'll generate questions for you. So now not only are you creating content from the outline, but you're creating a whole series of questions. Right? And these questions all came from the documentation that you're looking at. So you know they're going to be pretty much right. And with that said, at the end of the day, you just tell it how many questions you want and generate that many questions from the content that you gave it. So you have the opportunity to use the questionnaire to actually go through the entire outline without looking at a video course somewhere, going through a 21-hour video course, and pretty much just looking at the information you don't know, preparing questions for it to help you prepare for the exam. And that at 3:23 was the end of this presentation, I believe. And here's all those GPTs. So you can actually go there and play around with them themselves. Okay. And the last one was a GPT builder. So if you click on that, who has an idea about a GPT they want to build? Oh, I can't do it. Terrible. But a GPT builder will allow you to put an idea in there and actually give you the code for that GPT. And that's good starter code. You can take that and throw it into the your new GPT config file, and it'll run that GPT for you. So actually got a tool that builds tools. All right, that's it. I'm here to talk. Any more questions so far? Try out those links. Look at the code that I put in the slides. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. And I'm here right now for questions and to talk about this and show you anything you guys want to know.
Say I have like a text documentation full of questions. Is there a way for me to upload that text documentation to ChatGPT for it to
Yeah. So I'll show you real quick how to do that. The GPTs have a RAG system in them. And it's really powerful. And so let me show that to you real quick. There you go. So if I want to create a GPT, and we'll go here to explore, and then I hit create. Then if you go to config and you look at that and you scroll down, what you see is web browsing. All right. You have DALL-E, that's image generation code interpreter, that does amazing things. Create plots, analyzes data. That means it's amazing. It's very rich what you can do. Without even going out of the system, you got a lot of stuff. But also got upload files. So you can actually put files in here and you can upload them and interact with those files.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sure. It's like a RAG system. So someone mentioned about working with APIs. So I used to do a lot of programming with Hugging Face, and I still do a little bit. And in order to work in Hugging Face, you have to have an API that you're talking back and forth to. And so that's all coding. And so we used to build these RAG systems, and basically you build these vector databases that you could reach out to and pull information in. And so this allows you, this automatically does it for you. You don't have to do anything with the coding. It actually automatically builds the system for you. Cancel this. Puts the files in there, does the separation and the embedding. It's like you're dealing with a vector database. And so one of the things I'm doing with my wife, for her, she's a history professor at Northern Kentucky University. I'm actually building characters from history. So I'm gonna put all the speeches from Thomas Jefferson and all the speeches from Mother Teresa or whatever I have in there, and actually you can have a conversation with that person. And if you use DALL-E for voice, because it has realistic voices and you can clone voices, you can actually hear that person talk to you. So this stuff is pretty cool. But yeah, it has a RAG system. Just upload it right into here, and then you can interact with it. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're interested in working on something like that, just send me your ideas, and I can help you hack something out.
Will do. Thank you. Nick?
Hey Nick, join the hackathon.
Hackathon? All right.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent.